Welcome back to Kish and Tell. I want to start this video just by saying thank you so much to each and every one of you who has been so supportive during my health journey and just allowing me to kind of focus on that and kind of getting myself in a mental space. So thank you to everyone who has reached out to me personally, to everyone who has shared support on this platform and various other platforms. It means the world, it genuinely does. I have missed filming, so I'm actually really excited to film. I love a lot of different things, from Harry Potter to Game of Thrones to sewing to you name it. I love history, so I have a lot of different things that I have collected over the years, and I just thought that this would be a super fun new series as part of my channel where I get to show and tell, and you get to learn different facets of me, which I hope you find interesting. And that kind of, you saw from the title, those of you who know and love me know that I love to sew, but more than sewing, I have a slight addiction problem. And you say, what is that addiction problem, Kish? Is it sewing notions? No. Is it fabric? No. Is it patterns? Yeah. I have a slight pattern buying problem. Now, for those of you who don't sew, a sewing pattern is essentially a tissue form of the pattern pieces. So the pieces that you would need to cut out of the fabric that you can then piece together and sew, and it will essentially construct the entire garment. This is a great way to get started because you're not having to reinvent the wheel. I will often spend money on sewing patterns. I have a lot. I'm just going to cut to some B-roll of my patterns. Now, you may think that this is not a lot of patterns. And actually, for some, that isn't a lot. I do want to let you know that that is pared down. I have gotten rid of many patterns. I'm very proud of my pattern drawer because my pattern drawer is organized, which you're probably seeing in the B-roll right now. There's a lot of organization going on in there. But this video would take forever if I sat down and I showed you every single pattern I own, because there are hundreds. I have just chosen a small selection of my very favourite patterns to show you all and talk through them and what I love about them. I have a multitude of patterns for all different things: tops, trousers, dresses, skirts, costumes, historical, because one thing you will learn about me in this channel is that I love historical outfit. I particularly have an affinity for 1910, so that Edwardian silhouette, or that very late Victorian silhouette, so that 1900s silhouette. And when you think about it, a lot of fashion that we see today is drawn from different periods of history. A lot of the sleeves that you see in the 30s were drawn from the Victorian era. And now we're seeing a resurgence in the leg of mutton sleeves or the bishop sleeves, where we see these really big sleeves. And so we see them repeat themselves throughout history. And I just think that that's really fun, because sometimes you can really draw inspiration. And for me, that's what I love to do. Other period of history that I absolutely love is the 1930s and the 1940s. So that 1930s going into 40s glamour, that really like moving into A-lines, very tailored construction, where you could see that people were going from this Hollywood glam to a more austere kind of fashion because of the Second World War. And so, you know, you were also seeing women who were entering the workforce, and there was fabric rationing. So they really had to make things that worked for their day-to-day, glamorous, feel pretty, that was also very easy to work in. and they had to do it in a small amount of fabric and with these really beautiful silhouettes, and really where we start seeing the shoulder pad movement. A lot of people attribute shoulder pads to the 80s, but actually 80s shoulder pads, they need to thank the 1940s. But anyway, I didn't sign up to give you a history lesson. But anyway, without further ado, we are going to get into these patterns and we are going to start. So the very first pattern I'd like to show you is a recent acquisition, actually. I don't know if many of you have seen the movie Ever After with Drew Barrymore and Drew Gray Scott, but the scene where she enters the ball and she is dressed like this ethereal butterfly. I want to look like that. That's the kind of princess I want to be. And what is really fun is a lot of these big sewing companies, so there's the big four. There's McCall's, there's Simplicity, there is Butterick, and then there is Vogue. So the four big sewing companies, often when a big movie will come out or a popular movie will come out, they often work with the movie if there are going to be some distinct costumes so that the people in the sewing or cosplay community can actually make the garments. And so that is actually what they did. So this is I think this is year 2000, I think, which is when that movie came out, but I'll have it up on the screen. When Ever After came out, and they created this dress pattern of Drew Barrymore's dresses. This is a replica or like a dress pattern of that ball dress that she wears when she turns up and she's got the butterfly wings. And that, I think anyone who loves to sew has one costume in their life that they want to recreate, and that is this one for me. I don't know where I would go in that dress. I don't know what I would do in that dress, but I just want it. But me being Kish, I have to have two dream costumes. And so recently during this time of quarantine, I got Hulu and I watched Elle Fanning and Nicholas Holt's The Great. And it's about Catherine the Great. And one thing I'll say is the costume's not really historically accurate. There is a fuchsia gown that she wears, and that particular colour of fuchsia was not actually invented, the colour I'm wearing on my lips, was not actually invented until the year 1859. This takes place in the late 1700s in Russia, that colour 1859 in France, I believe. So, but also so pretty. So also must have this gown. Again, where am I going to need to wear a gown where it's going to require me wearing panniers, like a chemise, stays, which are 18th century corsets, and stockings and all the full garb? I don't know, but maybe I can just frolic around my house in it and just feel pretty. Why do I need to have a place to go? But I found these American Duchess Simplicity patterns, and they are American Duchess is synonymous pretty much at this point with 18th century beauty, fashion, styling. So I have these patterns because I love this chemise and I want the panniers here and I want these stays. So I couldn't just suffice with the chemise that came with this. I want this chemise because it's pretty, and I want this one because I want this corset and I want these panniers. So that's the undergarments to my dream dress, and I'm going to pop up my dream dress right here, the one that Elle Fanning wears in The Great. And this is the pattern I have got to replicate that dress, and I did also buy all 10 yards of the magenta fabric or fuchsia fabric. So it is there. Let me know down in the comments if you want to see a show and tell of my fabrics, because I have also acquired some more fabric over this quarantine. But yes, so I'm going to be using this pattern with some minor modifications to achieve this look that Elle Fanning wears in The Great, because I I need to have that dress. I just need it. You'll see there is a pattern here, no pun intended, where I have patterns that I don't need, I just want. Before I move into my actual vintage patterns, Simplicity have done reprints of their actual patterns from those eras, so from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. They have done actual reprints of what they had originally printed back then. So I have these three from the 1940s. And again, I just think that this just this glamour is just so gorgeous. And so this is a bathing suit pattern. And again, there are 4 different options here. So I personally really like this here, and I would make it with this jacket. So I would want this, and then I would actually want it in this kind of print, but maybe in like a red or a yellow. I think I would like this in. And so it shows you here what the original pattern looked like when it was originally issued in 1940. I think these blouses are so cute. I just think they're so stylish. Again, you can see that the real shoulder movement of the 40s, the nice big wide shoulders. I have pretty broad shoulders anyway, but I do think I just really like the silhouette. And I think in this one, I really love the Peter Pan collar. So I would probably actually do, because I love these sleeves right here, I would probably do B, but with the collar from A, because I think it's really pretty. Then my dream is to have an occasion, if the world ever reopens, to wear this glamazon of a dress from the 1940s. I think the little shawl detail that goes on the top here is just, oh, it's just absolutely gorgeous. But yeah, I would try my hardest to find this exact fabric, because I think that's what drew me to this pattern in the first place, is this beautiful look with the green polka dot. Now we're going to move into the 1950s. So we do have, again, some Simplicity reproductions of items from the 1950s, and these you can actually tell. So these are both kind of later into the 50s, entering the 60s, when women, kind of that Mad Men style, had started again to re-enter the workforce, but in a more of a secretarial manner, versus obviously in the factories helping with the war effort. So there was like this period of about 10 years in the late 40s, early 50s, where women went back home, they were expected to be housewives, and then sort of in the later half of the 50s, I would even say like 57, 58 kind of years, women started to re-enter the workforce, and again, they wanted something a bit more sensible, so more streamlined. So not these big Dior, poofy silhouettes that were really popular of the early 50s, but these more tailored kind of looks here that were probably more fitting for an office space. So, but again, I don't know when I will make these, but if I do, I'm really interested in making this one. I love this. I just think that's really pretty. And then out of this one, I would love to make this. And what I would love to do is exactly what you see here. If you can see, the dress lining and the jacket is the same as the dress. And I just think that would just look so chic. And it's very Mrs. Maisel. If you've seen The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, it's very Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. So, finishing off of the 50s, this is kind of like, I don't even know how I managed to get this pattern, but I absolutely adore it. It's still in the plastic, I won't be taking it out, but this is a Vogue pattern from 1950s. And what is very interesting about this, you can see that this is straight kind of off the runway. So it's that very 1950s Christian Dior silhouette. So this is very early 50s. In fact, you can see the model here and she looks a lot like Elizabeth Taylor. I just absolutely love this. This is not a small feat. This was definitely, after the war, people were like, the war is over, the more fabric, the better, the bigger the silhouette, the better, the more petticoats, the better. So yeah, this is definitely a dream dress. It's absolutely gorgeous. And you can see it was only 75 cents at the time. So I just love it. Love, love, love it. I love to go to antique stores, and this was a magazine that I found, or a catalogue that I found, and it has these really great dresses. Now, I haven't been able to actually determine exactly what year this is. By the style of the outfits, I want to again say that this is like early to mid 50s, but if anyone, when I'm sort of flicking through this, knows, please let me know in the comments. If you've even heard of Skylark Original, because I tried to Google it and nothing comes up on Google about this, but some of these items are just absolutely fabulous. I mean, and the fact that this entire dress at this time cost $10.98. To be fair, I also feel like $10.98 back in the 50s was probably a lot of money. I don't know what the inflation would be, so what the comparison at this time would be. I just feel like there was so much style. Look at that. These are hilarious. So these are like little advertisements for beauty treatments that people could get if they had bad skin or dingy teeth. Oh, how did I miss this one? New wonderful drug for fat people. What a time. What I always say is vintage style, not vintage values, because this is not okay, people. Like, I don't even want to know what is in this amazing new wonder drug. Are you just too fat? So rude. Basically, what I'm realizing is that nothing's changed. I think there is this common misconception that bigger people didn't exist in history, and actually that's not the truth. And what it really goes to show is that what we see in history is what was in vogue, right? And what was in vogue for a long, long time were these somewhat curvy girls like Marilyn Monroe, but they were still very, very thin or very, very small. And then you went through this phase in like the 80s and the 90s where models were rail thin. And that's what you've always seen through history, is these body ideals that not everyone can achieve. And if they're making drugs for fat people, it just goes to show that this was a struggle of everyday women, even in the 50s. So kind of makes you feel a little bit better that this is an ongoing struggle, but they got away with a lot in those days, I'll just say that. So moving on to the 60s, the 1960s, and what is really cool is that during the 60s and the 70s, I don't know if they went into the 80s, and I'm not sure if it was in the 50s, but especially during the 60s and the 70s, Vogue Patterns collaborated with Paris Fashion Week. And what they did is big designers like Lanvin, Balmain, Bill Blass, Belinda Belleville, there are so many designers that you could think of, and they basically, these designers would work with Vogue patterns, sewing patterns, and they would say, look, this is going to be the hot silhouette of this year, so here is the sewing pattern that we created for this dress for people who want to recreate this dress at home. Because again, even in the 60s and 70s, people were still sewing a lot of their dresses. You know, it wasn't as mainstream to get these dresses just in your store. So these are awesome. So this is my Balmain dress. This is my Bill Blass dress, which I just think, oh, so stunning. And this is my Belinda Belleville, and I just die. I just die just for this. This is, honestly, it is just so gorgeous. I always think, like, this would be so cute as a bride and a bridesmaid, like this little, for the bridesmaids, if you wanted like a real 60s mod look. But yeah, and you know, it's a great way to have a designer piece, but you made it. It's kind of cool, you know, and you could make it for a fraction of the price, but you had a silhouette that was right off the runway and you were with the trend. I just think that that's so cool, and I wish that they still did stuff like that, which Vogue still kind of does, and I will show you that a very modern one that I have where they've kind of done that, but for the most part they don't really do that, and designers don't really want people recreating their stuff anymore. But I do think it is cool to own these little pieces of Paris Fashion Week from the 60s and from such a glamorous age. I mean, that is just, these are just glamour personified. I mean, look at that hair. Ugh, to die for. To die for. Absolutely love them. Again, there was a resurgence of women's equality in the 70s, and women were taking on far more serious roles. They had kind of graduated from the secretarial role that you kind of see in Mad Men. They had kind of graduated from that, and they were now taking on, you know, more senior roles in companies. They were starting to be taken, I mean, we're still fighting for equal pay, but we were definitely seeing more women entering the workforce. And so there was this real push, again, kind of how you saw in the 40s, where they moved into a more tailored look, where again in the 70s they moved into a more tailored look. And I absolutely love this vintage simplicity pattern that is actually, this one says it is from 1972. So this is 1972, and you can see this very Diane Keaton kind of look here, that early 70s. I just think it's so cool. And this is kind of like, when you start to love historical fashion, you can kind of see that this was 70s interpretation of the 40s. So this is a Balmain piece. And again, I just love this. This kind of gives me like the Queen vibes at Balmoral, which again is an aesthetic that I could definitely get on board with, because I think we've been sleeping on the Queen's fashion and she had it going on. But I absolutely just love the tailored form of both of these pieces. And then this is again a recent acquisition, and I absolutely love this. This is a style that is really, you're going to see a lot of this sort of like two-tone look. If you haven't already seen it, it has made a major comeback. You're seeing a lot of these two-tone dresses that are in like fuchsia pink and orange. But this is from 1970, and I just think, and this is, I believe this is Lam Vam. And this particularly is just absolutely gorgeous. This sort of like baby pink, and then this orchid purple. I just think it's so cute. So I would absolutely love to recreate this dress in this color, but also in like an aqua and royal blue, because I think that that would look really, really pretty as well. And then I did talk about how Vogue doesn't do the Vogue Paris original anymore. They do draw inspiration from modern designers, and I'll give you 3 guesses when I throw this one up who the designer is that they drew the inspiration from. On this one, you only need to look at the grosgrain ribbon detail here and the silhouettes to know that I'm talking about Gucci. So yeah, this is, again, I'll throw the actual Gucci picture up here so you can see exactly where they drew their inspiration from. So I had to get this because I absolutely love this skirt and I love this jacket. So at some point I would love to make those. Kate Middleton has this Miu Miu coat, and it's like a tartan coat that she wears kind of at Christmas time, and it is absolutely beautiful. It is this military double-breasted tartan coat that is A-line with like a fur collar and cuffs, and I saw this pattern and I just thought, this is perfect. I can lengthen the sleeves obviously to make it a coat, but this is essentially exactly, and I'll pop up right here, the coat that is creating and drawing the inspiration for this pattern. So yeah, I would absolutely love to recreate that because I just think it's so chic. That has been a long video, but I have hoped you have enjoyed the show and tell of my patterns, and you can see how happy they make me. It is kind of like a drug because I'm just like buzzing right now. And I cannot wait to look through all my new patterns that I got. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button, and while you're down there, hit that notification bell. I upload every Wednesday and every Saturday. Saturdays are my check-in, Wednesdays are my fun videos. And if you haven't, please comment. I always love to read your comments. They make me so happy. And please like and share, because I know that there are other people who are struggling to get started on their health and fitness journey. And if I can be a person who inspires them or helps them or just lets them know they have someone fighting in their corner, then I want to be that person. So please like and share. And I think that covers everything for this Wednesday. And until Saturday, I love you all, my Kishlings. Bye!